If you think you have some idea of how this is going to end, you should probably think again. Actually, to be fair, it pretty much ends exactly where you think it's going to end, but the way she chooses to get us there, yeah, I don't think anyone saw that coming. And this feels like a special video for some reason. I can't really put my finger on why, because it's not the first series I've completed, but it definitely was a longer running series than the last one. And even though it's only been like 10 videos, it's been like 7 months of a journey, at least for me, reading through these slowly bit by bit and getting to this culmination that is the end, volume 23. And so speaking of the end, here we are. And even though I'm going to go through the story and keep us on track here, I'm definitely not going beat by beat like I have gone before, because I definitely had read the most that I've read for a video before, and I don't feel like going through beat by beat would do any of that any justice. And for the most part, I kind of just want to talk about the end of Dorohedoro. Also, with this being a special video, I have an extra special announcement, because I'm going to thank my patrons like I always do, but this week I got my very first elite tier patron ever, and I want to give an extra special shout out to Neon Art. Thank you so very much. That is the highest level of patronage that I have, so I guess I'm just saying thank you to all my patrons, and an extra special thank you to Neon Art. So anyway, we're going to start off right where we left off, with the Cross-Eyes boss taking Nikaido and Ibisu and running away. We also get reintroduced to the pie shop people, and one of them goes riding off to see what's wrong with the sky, and keep an eye on these people because they will eventually become quite important in the future. At least the one in the sky will. But with everybody in En's family all healed up by Noi, En's gonna create an army of mushroom men to fight the Cross-Eyes boss that he can control from a distance, and he's gonna make him out of Ibisu's head. He's then gonna take on the boss with his mushroom army. Also, we're going to get the origin of the boss kind of explained to the professor, and it's pretty much everything that we already knew before, re-explained again, except this time at the end of it, it explains that his one true desire is to kill all sorcerers, which is kind of like that one sentence that was left off the end of the last time this was explained to us. Now back with En and the boss and their big epic battle. He's gonna fill them with mushrooms and just keep expanding them to the point where he expands and blows up into this big blob looking thing. Kaiman swoops in, cuts off his head, revealing the one final head that he has left. Risu's gonna come in and cut that off, essentially freeing himself from the curse and killing the Cross-Eyes boss. The end. And it's not the end, but it was amazingly quick and easy ending to what essentially was this like past several volume buildup. I was a little bit surprised at how quickly and easily we wrapped that up. And like I said, it's not the ending at all, but it is kind of the end if you think about it. The end of that section or that iteration of the boss and of that tone that we had set, that dramatic buildup, that tension. All of that really did end with this scene. And we're going to start a new section with a new tone and a very different feel moving forward. So essentially, the boss is dead. All of his heads have been cut off or removed or destroyed in one way, shape, or form or another. So everything that made the boss pretty much has been killed off and destroyed, except one thing. There's one thing left, and that is the grudge that created him in the first place. And that desire to kill all sorcerers is going to form itself into a whole new body, which I'm going to call Discount Sauron. Also, when he creates his new body, everyone in the surrounding vicinity of him is basically trapped inside of his new body, being melted by the black goo. Meanwhile, over with the devils, the head devil's going to turn all the other devils back into sorcerers because of a bet that they all have. Not really important. Then he's going to go over and he's going to try to become friends with Discount Sauron, or Holy. Now, back to that change in tone that I was talking about. We have a bigger big bad, or the pure big bad. I'm not entirely sure how you want to look at it, but we have this new iteration of it's not really the Cross Eyes boss anymore. Now it's just the ultimate desire to kill sorcerers. So here's the new ultimate big bad. We're going to get scarier, right? No, we dip right out of all that serious tone, all that serious tension that you thought we were building there. Yeah, get rid of that because we're going back to the silly. Like we're talking now, this guy's going to start walking around killing and eating sorcerers with a giant knife and fork. He might essentially be more powerful than the last version of him, but he's definitely also sillier. Also, at this point, Nikaido's going to transform and she's going to go full devil, which apparently makes her into a very buff man. Also, Nikaido and them are the only ones that are not trapped inside of Holy's body because Asu teleported them out. So now, Nikaido's going to take the store knife from Kaiman and go on an epic battle against Holy. And I do mean epic. Like, just grand scale fight scene looking, just the way it's drawn and the way Q can do some of these things, very well done. Which she actually ultimately loses because Holy uses the very last shot of her magic box to go back 1 minute in time or something like that and kill her. And this kind of plays into what I was talking about when I say it doesn't really go the way that you're going to expect because, you know, we just ditched everything that was there before. And we have the same bad guy just kind of transformed, and it's going in a completely different direction than before. And we thought that black box was going to be important. It's not. And last time we checked, it had like 3 or 4 shots left. Now it's empty because there was some like 2-page explanation of the fact that, oh, well, Nikaido, future Nikaido must have used it before. And because future Nikaido did this and future Nikaido did that, there would only be 1 shot left. So we're now primed to think that there's 1 shot left, but then the main bad guy just uses that 1 last shot to kill Nikaido. So that's over and done with, and it was never really a thing at all. Okay. I'm just saying, throw anything out that you had in your mind as to what might happen or the mechanics that might be involved here in the future because they won't. It won't happen. Nothing happens the way you think it's going to happen. Period. But just then past Nikaido shows up with the box and uses it again to come back from the dead. See? This is what I'm talking about. We just explained that that was the last shot. But now she's back with the box. What does it mean? It doesn't really matter, I don't think. I don't think there's a rhyme or a reason to the logic, and I don't think there's supposed to be. If you're really dialed in on the mechanics of how this works, you're either going to be upset or lost, because I don't think they matter, and I don't think they're supposed to. But anyway, now we get this little scene of Kaiman remembering everything. Remembering everything from all of his different personas and his different selves and his different lives and his different heads and just his different everything. And we get the merging of all Kaiman's and all Kaiman's brains and thoughts and peoples into one ultimate Kaiman, which if you think about it is exactly what I said was going to happen for Kaiman, which I said was going to be the ultimate form of Kaiman. So if there's anything that goes the way that I thought it was going to go, I'm just going to have to say I called it. I told you so. I have video proof of it somewhere. This is the one and only time I get to say, I told you so, in this whole video. Anyway, he swoops in and grabs Nikaido and looks like he's going to be some kind of this amazing badass and have a great scene of his own when Holy snatches up Nikaido, Asu, rips off their heads and puts them on one of his spikes. So I guess Nikaido's dead again. After she was already dead and then came back with the black box that didn't have any magic left, but somehow it did because she needed to come back just so she could die again. We're back to madness. Anyway, now, the final volume. Volume 23. And all the devils are going to give Kaiman sorcerer's powers. And now it comes down to an epic battle between Sorcerer Kaiman and Holy. And I'm not going to lie, this volume right here, volume 23, somehow feels simultaneously way too long and really rushed. Let me explain. It feels way too long because over the course of the 23 volumes, we have built up Just so many characters. Like, oh my god, the amount of characters that we have developed and created over these 23 volumes is astronomical. And she is going to touch on every single one of them and kind of wrap everything up as she goes along and kind of get everybody where they need to be to wrap this up or wrap their stories up in this volume. And that feels like it's going on for way too long because we've built up way too many characters. At the same time, each one of these things that we touch gets wrapped up relatively quickly, which makes it feel like some of this is just rushed to get it all done in time, making it feel too long and rushed all at the same time. I'm not saying that it's a bad volume at all. I'm just saying I got that feeling from the volume. And that was kind of unavoidable with the madness that she kind of created here. We were on a slippery slope no matter what. And also in the last volume, it kind of took the main bad guy and made him silly. Now this is going to take Kaiman and give him magical sorcerer powers. And his magical sorcerer powers is a gyoza wand. And this gyoza wand is simultaneously the most OP weapon in the entire manga, giving him the powers of literally every sorcerer ever, and the magic powers to do literally anything it wants or needs to do at that second in time, basically making him, I don't know, unstoppable in every conceivable situation, and simultaneously being the silliest weapon imaginable, like you could ever imagine. So now we have a silly bad guy fighting the silliest version of Kaiman we've had to this thus far. So in a story that I thought was going to lean into the dramatic and the heavy and the emotional, it went a different direction than that. Not to say that this isn't a direction that, Dorohedoro has ever gone in before, or even is antithetical to Dorohedoro in the first place. Because Dorohedoro in its essence is a silly manga. I just didn't expect it to go this way. Like, for example, other, manga and anime in general have a tendency to build up. Like, they'll start silly, or they'll start goofy, or they'll start kiddie or childish feeling, and they build and they build and they build, and by the time they get to the big dramatic climax, they've evolved and built into some whole heavy-hitting, emotional, pounding, just drama to the mat. You're like, where did this, at what point did this kiddie thing or silly thing evolve into this massive emotional superpower? And I expected that from this. And it felt like that's exactly where we were going until Q Hayashida was like, psych, we're not doing that. We're going back to Silly Town. And it's, for better or worse, I think it works. At least for this manga. Anyway, Holy and Kaiman do battle, and this battle is going to go round and round for a while. Meanwhile, the glasses person from the pie shop finds a door that Holy's using to bring souls back and forth. And this will become important in a minute. At one point, Kaiman's going to realize that he can absorb black goo, and he's going to start absorbing Holy's goo. And then Kaiman and Holy are going to have a goo-sucking competition, to which eventually Kaiman's going to lose, and Holy will suck all of Kaiman's goo and all of Kaiman's goo-sucking powers. So now Kaiman can't suck goo anymore, and he's essentially powerless, and he's standing there having a face-off with Holy. Also in there somewhere, I completely forgot to mention that En's family came up with this master plan as to how to get out of the body, and they got out of the body. This is only really important because now that Kaiman is completely powerless and face to face with the giant floating head that is Holy, Shin is going to use his powers to separate the head into slices, revealing a devil tumor inside. Kaiman jumps up, destroys the devil tumor, and destroys Holy. And I'm just going to keep saying this, but none of this happened the way that I thought it was going to happen. Like, I totally expected maybe Kaiman and Nikaido to team up and go on this big epic battle versus the bad guy. Maybe, because if you really want to know what I really thought was going to happen, I really thought that it was going to be like this epic team up of everybody that we've really gathered to follow throughout, putting aside their differences and forming a band, and Nikaido and Kaiman getting together with En and his family, and they all have to band together in order to fight the big bad guy and defeat him and ultimately win the day. Yeah, that didn't happen. No, no. Also, why was there a devil tumor? Was he just a sorcerer like everybody else? Because that's completely opposite to what he was supposed to be. He's supposed to be a pile of dead humans and a deep grudge against sorcerers. But at the end of the day, when you opened up his head, there was a devil tumor inside of it, just like all the other sorcerers, and you killed him just like he was any other sorcerer. Even though he wasn't a sorcerer, he was a pile of dead bodies and human hatred. So that doesn't make sense either. So basically, at the end of the day, it was a big stack of nonsense that didn't make sense, and none of the rules ever applied, and none of the stakes ever. Now, the one other thing that I have been saying this whole time is there are no stakes, there is no tension, and nothing matters, and that stands true to this point here. Nobody died. I don't think anybody died in the entire manga now that I think back on it. I'm sure somebody's going to jump in the comment and be like, remember Bob and Stan? They died and didn't get resurrected. I'm not complaining, I promise. I'm just pointing out the insanity that is Dorohedoro. Yes. Also, with the epic climax of this, I want to point out just exactly how happy I am that it came down to Shin and Kaiman, just because I love Shin. Like, he's one of my ultimate favorite characters in this entire thing, and the fact that him being released from the body just in time to split that head open for the final blow, him being that important to the final death blow of Holy was just, just so satisfying. I loved it. Anyway, they go ahead and they bring Nikaido back to life. Kaiman decides to keep his lizard face, and everybody lives happily ever after. We even get one final goodbye chapter showing that everybody lives happily ever after, and proving the one other thing that I've said this entire time, and that is that there are no consequences in this world. And it is a really nice, wonderful little chapter, and it is the perfect wrap up. Now, let me just say, if there are any flaws in this manga as a whole, this last chapter is not one of them. This last chapter is the most satisfying happily ever after I've read in a while, just because it kind of touches on all the characters. It shows you just where they are and just what's going on, and I absolutely loved it. It was such a satisfying feeling reading that last chapter, with the standout moment of that entire chapter for me personally and my personal investment in the story to be Fujita retiring the funeral shoes and laying them to rest after having done his best to honor his friend. I just realized that there's a character who actually died, and it was Fujita's friend, and the reason he wears the funeral shoes the entire time. I finally found one character that actually died. Oh my God. Anyway, no, but honestly, the standout moment for the entire chapter for me was when Fujita retired his funeral shoes. And Ibisu, out of the kindness of her own heart, makes him a new pair with skulls on them and walks away wailing with laughter like a madman. I love Ibisu so much, I cannot help it. She's my favorite. And in the end, it was just a wild ride, wasn't it? Oh my God. It was a wild ride that went almost nowhere, if you really think about it. But it was the most satisfying nowhere journey I've ever been on. And in the words of Q Hayashida, everything goes back to chaos. Now we got to score this. And if I'm being honest, for most of the read, especially the later volumes, like volume 23, I was feeling more like an 8.5 as I was reading it. Especially when it started to lean so far into the silly. A lot of the stuff with the magic Gyoza wand and Kaiman and his like Gyoza wings and Gyoza suits and Gyoza this, a lot of that I ended up just more rolling my eyes at than fully enjoying. And if that's what your enjoyment in Dorohedoro is, that kind of silliness that it has very much so been injecting since the beginning, then you might be feeling a 10 out of 10 for some of these last chapters. I was not. Like I said, I felt more like rolling my eyes at some of this stuff than actually feeling truly excited to read it. That being said, I'm going to go ahead and let this keep its 9 rating because it was so true to what it is and what it has always been. Essentially, it was so true to itself. I cannot fault it for that. At the same time, it wrapped up so satisfyingly, and it was such a satisfying ending to read. That last chapter was almost a 10 out of 10. So we're going to take the high highs and the little dips that it gave me throughout this last stretch, and we're just going to balance it all out, and we're just going to call it 9. I had a wonderful time with this one. I hope you had a wonderful time with this one. As always, everybody, the link for my Patreon's in the description below. The link for my Discord's in the description below. Thank you so very much for watching. Now back to the chaos.